Southeast Asia, late 1960s. As the United States fights a controversial war in Vietnam, few Americans are aware that right next door in Laos, armed American servicemen are secretly conducting another war. The largest CIA covert operation in history.
The orders that I had was report to Mr. Black. It was a secret assignment.
Everybody's in civilian clothing. Nobody has a real name.
U.S. Air Force pilots are operating undercover, deciding where and when American bombs will drop on targets in Laos.
Blow up their supplies if you can find them. Kill their troops if you can find them.
It's like combat to the 10th power, for sure.
They are known by their radio call sign, Raven.
Being a Raven was the greatest combat job that exists in the world.
You lived intensely, and it was dangerous.
It didn't take long for you to learn that this was a different war.
For 8 years, the Ravens fought in secret to stop communism. They did as their government asked, until they were told to pack their bags and go home, and forget about the whole thing. But the Ravens haven't forgotten. This is their story.
Spot that I went down right there.
35 years ago, these men were plainclothes warriors in a conflict that America wanted to keep undercover. These 4 Ravens are returning to Laos, a country still cloaked in layers of secrecy that they must now strip away. Larry Sanborn, Sandy, a senior Raven during his time in Laos. Mike Cavanaugh, Raven 48, spent 5 years in Southeast Asian combat zones where he learned to speak the Lao language. Ron Reinhardt, Papa Fox, Ohio farm boy who always wanted to be a soldier. He identified with the Laotian villagers who took up arms against the communists. Fred Platt, magnet ass, shot down 10 times. On his last flight, he was paralyzed and told he would never walk again. In the 1950s, a communist faction known as the Pathet Lao began trying to take over Laos. They were backed by North Vietnamese troops, who in turn were backed by the Chinese and Soviets. Americans who believed in the domino theory feared that if communists won in Laos, other countries in Southeast Asia would also topple.
If Laos fell, Cambodia would go, Thailand would go, and God knows what would go next. The Eisenhower administration thought that Laos was the key in Southeast Asia.
At Geneva in 1962, an accord was signed guaranteeing the neutrality of Laos. But the North Vietnamese broke the treaty before the ink was dry by leaving their troops in place. The United States felt a need to respond, but it would have to be done covertly. An assignment handed to the CIA.
We wanted to be able to say to the American people and to the United Nations that we did not have the United States military personnel in the country.
The CIA would run the war, but they would need a proxy army of foot soldiers to fight it. CIA operative Bill Lair found them, a Laotian mountain tribe called the Hmong. A tiny minority in Laos, the Hmong had a history of fighting the North Vietnamese.
I knew the Hmong from Thailand. They were a fiercely independent people. They didn't want a central government to bother them. They hated the communists because the communists try to organize everything into their system.
All they wanted from the very start, Bill will tell you, all they wanted was a plot of ground. They wanted everybody to leave them alone. And they fought and died for that.
Bill Lair gave the Hmong American weapons and lessons in modern warfare. To these Hmong tribesmen, siding with the Americans seemed like a safe bet.
In 1962, the idea of the United States losing against North Vietnam seemed incredible for just about everybody.
But the communists proved more tenacious than anyone predicted. North Vietnam saw the strategic importance of Laos. They ran a supply network, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, through Laotian territory into South Vietnam. As part of an expanding effort to defend South Vietnam, the CIA began using Hmong guerrillas to harass these supply lines. But the Hmong were badly outnumbered. So in 1967, the U.S. decided to provide the Hmong with air support. That's when the Ravens were sent in, to live and fight with the Hmong. In the 35 years since the Ravens first arrived in Laos, much has changed. Their war was lost. Laos and Vietnam are communist today.
The last time I saw a truck like that, trying to get rid of it.
The Ravens have changed too. They were young warriors then. Now, well into middle age, they have returned to Laos to make peace with their own pasts.
I feel like I'm home. You know, it's like returning home after a long, long absence.
The Ravens will have a guide and translator, Susath Patrazi, a retired colonel in the Communist Army that took over after the Ravens left, which makes it surprising when he shows up wearing a Ravens t-shirt to greet the men who once bombed his country. Susath himself will be watched by communist chaperones, minders, assigned to monitor where the Ravens go and who they talk to. Officially, the Ravens are now tourists, and the video crew is shooting home movies. Everyone knows it's a lie, but the Ravens have had plenty of experience living a lie.
As far as American manpower in Laos is concerned, there are none there at the present time on a combat basis.
Most Ravens first heard of Laos through rumors in the bars and barracks of Vietnam. Tales of another conflict, a less restrictive clandestine war.
They let the word leak out that there was this secret program and that it was volunteer only, and if you were really looking for where the real war was, then this was the place to go.
The program attracted a special breed. True believers convinced that stopping communism was a noble cause, worth fighting for with everything they had.
I got a little dissatisfied in Vietnam. Didn't have the appearance of a group of people that were actively out to win the war.
And so I asked if there's any way to get out of this chicken shit outfit, you know?
I was struggling against my own command structure the entire time I was in Vietnam. They did not want you to take bullet holes. They didn't want you to do your job. They just wanted you to fill a square and go home. I couldn't tolerate that attitude. I came to fight a war and aggressively fight it.
Volunteers for the Raven program may have wanted more action than Vietnam offered, but when they got to Laos, they got more than they could have imagined.